Hello there. Some of you are thinking about leaving the United States and going to Israel. Well, this message is for you. I want to read Ezekiel 37:21 to 22. And this is not to dissuade you in any way, shape, or form. And some of you are thinking about going to South America and other parts of the world, Europe, Greece, the Middle East. I'm not saying it's a bad idea at all, but let's read. It's actually prophesied. Let's read Ezekiel 37:21 and 22, which has been partially misinterpreted for a long time. It says in verse 21, "Then say to them, Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Surely I will take the children of Israel from among the nations wherever they have gone, and will gather them from every side and bring them into their own land." And we've seen that people talk about this and they say, you see, the Jews were spread out all over the world, and then they were brought back to Israel when Israel became a nation again in 1948. And then it says in verse 22, "And I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them all. They shall no longer be two nations, nor shall they ever be divided into two kingdoms again." What? What was that about two kingdoms or two nations and being divided? Does that make sense about the Jews? No, it doesn't. When you just talk about the Jews going back to Israel, it doesn't make sense. But if you study Israel history in the Bible, you know that Israel was composed of 12 tribes. And then at one point, soon after King David died, even after King Solomon died, the nation, really all of the nation was sinning, but there was a division. And the lower section of Israel, which you would know as Judea, basically there were the descendants of the tribe of Judah and some of Levi and Benjamin. And then in the northern tribes were all of the other tribes that you know about: Asher, Simeon, Dan, Manasseh, Ephraim. So when they were dispersed, it happened in two different times, but they eventually were all dispersed, not just the Jews. And the Jews managed to keep their identity all through those years that they were dispersed, most of the Jews. But the other tribes of Israel, the other descendants that were not descendants of Judah, lost their way. They even lost their identity. And most of us, many of us, are probably descendants of those lost tribes of Israel. So now when you read this verse again, it will have different meaning for you, especially for those of you who are planning on leaving the United States. And when I say this, please don't think that I am only talking about white Americans of European ancestry. We don't even know how far the dispersal went. I can very well accept that there are descendants of Israelites who are by race black, white, Asian, Indian, South American, which is a mixture of races. I'll put no limit on it. I don't know. It's hard to say. But anyway, Yahweh predicts, he says, "Surely I will take the children of Israel." Now that's not the Jews. That's the children of all of Israel, all of his children. From among the nations, we're spread out among all the nations of the world, wherever they have gone, and will gather them from every side and bring them into their own land. Our own land is waiting there. It's in the Middle East. It's squeezed between all of those other Arab countries. Right there, the land of Israel. And it should actually be bigger than what is outlined there. It's much bigger. The biblical borders and definition of Israel are much bigger than what we see present day the country of Israel actually has. It's being squeezed on all sides. It's ridiculous. And they're going to give up more land. They should be taking more land, not giving up. Yahweh promised them much more, but we're going to have to wait for the kingdom for that to happen. And then it says in verse 22, and I will make them one nation in the land. He's talking about the two divided parts, Judah in the south, and Ephraim or Israel in the north, the northern tribes that didn't include Judah. They were separated into two kingdoms. They even fought against each other. He's going to bring them back together, and one king shall be king over them. I wonder who that king is going to be. It's going to be the King of Kings. One king shall be king over them all. They shall no longer be two nations, nor shall they ever be divided into two nations, two kingdoms again. So we know this hasn't happened. This is prophecy. This is for the future. It's really exciting. So for those of you who are planning on going back, you want to leave the U.S., or wherever you live and you want to go to Israel, I think it's a great idea. Granted, Israel only has its doors wide open for Jews right now, which really isn't fair, because those of us who are descendants of the other Israelite tribes, we have a claim on that land too. But I just want to encourage you, because I have heard rumors that things are working in our favor, so that the doors may open up soon in the next months or years, so that all of the rest of the tribes of Israel, those descendants who want to go back there, can go back there. The rest of the world probably thinks we're crazy, and even Americans would think, why would you want to go there where all the problems are? But soon there will be no place on earth that will be safe or good, and definitely staying in Babylon isn't a good idea, because it's going to be destroyed. So if that's where you have your eyes set on Israel, we should all have our eyes set there. And if you're going to go directly there, then amen and peace for you and blessings for you. I know that it's a blessing to live, because I know people who live in the land there in Israel, and it's a great blessing to live there. You see the Bible much more differently. It's all around you, the geography. And there are a lot of terrible things there, though, too. It's still a very secular nation, and it has a lot of terrible, corrupt things going on it, and it needs to be cleaned up. And that's what, when Yeshua comes back, everything is going to be put back and made right. And so we're all praying for that day. None of us, though, are looking forward to the days of the tribulation, nor should we. There are scriptures that talk about that. We shouldn't seek death, and we shouldn't be happy that the tribulation is going to come, because it's going to be the most terrible time to ever happen or affect earth. It isn't going to be fun or a party. It's going to be awful. Many people are going to die. It's going to be a time of just terrible things going on the earth, with war and murders and just awful, disgusting things. It says in the Bible, it says it's going to be the worst time that man or humanity has ever experienced. I mean, the worst time. Think of it. I mean, in the Middle Ages, there were terrible things going on, and during the different world wars, it was terrible. And this is going to be much more worse. So, much worse, not more worse. It's going to be much worse. I wouldn't be happy that the tribulation is coming, but I do look forward to the coming of Yeshua and his kingdom. And I look forward to seeing all of you there too.